Time goes by, years and decades. She comes, she goes, but her story remains so. She is you, I, and the others. She belongs to herself and not another. She is whole, complete, and absolute, for she is resolute.
Hello and welcome to She Is Resolute. I'm your host Suvarna, and our endeavor on this show is to showcase conversations of grit and growth for the determined modern woman willing to take complete ownership of her life and her mindset. Our attempt is to bring to the fore actionable information on personal development through discussions with experts and personalities who have, in one way or another, proven that they too are resolute. So enjoy the episode and please do like, share, and subscribe.
So, whenever we think of neuroscience or a neurobiology research lab, we often think about studies being conducted on maybe apes or rats or monkeys. But did you know that there is another hyper specialized area of research in the field of neurobiology that studies the specific components of the nervous system of smaller organisms like worms? Studies of these worms, among other things, helps researchers understand how our neurons communicate with each other. Interesting, isn't it? Our guest today is an expert in this area of research. We welcome Dr. Kavita Babu, who's the winner of the 2019 Janki Amal National Women Bioscientists Award, which is conferred by the Government of India to women scientists in the country who are doing groundbreaking work in research and in the field of biology and biotechnology. She's currently an associate professor at the Center for Neuroscience, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. And the research in her lab focuses on studying the neurobiology of a specific worm, C. elegans, and use that understanding to gain more insight into the human brain and into human neurobiology. I'm extremely excited to have with us a person who has achieved so much at such a young age, to understand her journey from an academically rich background and an electrifying career in science, and have her take on grit and growth. Dr. Kavita, thank you so much for being a part of She's Resolute.
Thank you so much, Suvarna. I look forward to the episode.
I have so many questions and I'm super excited. So I'm just going to jump right in. As mentioned in the introduction, your lab works on a specific type of worm for your research. So for our audience and for someone like me who doesn't have a science background, can you explain the reason behind studying, the neurobiology of worms? And, how is this a model organism for the neuroscience research for the human brain?
Yeah. So we study this very small worm. It's called Caenorhabditis elegans, and it's extremely tiny. You can only see it under a microscope, but it has a lot of advantages. Every neuron in that organism has been mapped. That's very different from any other organism which has a nervous system. So we know where every neuron is. We know who each neuron talks to. So a lot of how each neuron connects with another neuron is also known. So this starts making it very, simplistic in a sense that, okay, we know what these neurons are, who these neurons are. But, what's the use? Then you think that, okay, if all of that is known, then what are we actually going to find out, right? I mean, if everything is known, what's there to find out? But when you just compare it, the human brain has billions and billions of neurons. Right. C. elegans has 302 neurons. It's a really small number. And these neurons make connections to other neurons. There are trillions of these connections in humans, in vertebrates. In C. elegans, it's at the ballpark of around 7,000 connections.
I see.
So making it very simple. But what is really interesting is that compared to humans who have 25,000 genes that express different proteins that allow us to become who we are, or compared to most vertebrates, C. elegans actually has a comparable number. It has around 20,000 genes. And these genes code for very similar proteins. So we have sets of proteins which are called transcription factors, which allow for expression of other proteins. Those transcription factors are conserved in C. elegans. You might have heard of, if you think about neurobiology, you hear of neurotransmitters. And the molecules that are required to make the neurotransmitters are fairly conserved in C. elegans. the receptors to which neurotransmitters bind are conserved. So there's a lot of conservation at the molecular level. So making it a really good system to actually study molecules. And one way of studying molecules is genetics. You can knock down the molecule, you can make mutations in the molecule. All of that becomes much easier to do in a simple system where you can actually, where the protein is being expressed, which neuron it is, but you don't know what this molecule is doing. So you can just go ahead and see, okay, if I remove this molecule, what happens to the worm? And if I put it back into one specific neuron, what happens? So all of those questions can actually be answered in a fairly simple manner. However, having said all this, obviously you cannot just say this happens in worms, so it's going to happen in humans. It's not going to work that way, right?
All right.
So, once you have a foundation, you lay the foundation, you figure out what different molecules are doing, you can go ahead and look at other vertebrate systems like rodents, see if they play a similar role, and then go on further from that. So that's decades of work that one, when one thinks about it. But I'm interested in the initial part of it, where I'm just looking at what happens in the worm and how this molecule might be playing an important role there. And then maybe thinking about, okay, maybe it, in vertebrates, it might have a similar kind of function. And it's known, there's a lot of molecules that are known to have very similar functions in worms and vertebrate organisms.
So effectively, for someone like me, what I understand from it is that you're understanding the molecular science of neural synapses, and you're trying to see if it can be compared to the human neural synapses, and if that will have an effect on the way that neurons work in humans. Right?
Yes. But I don't do the second part. I only do the first part of it. So
I see.
So, other groups might be interested in this information and look at it in vertebrates or humans.
Okay. So now that we know that, the worms, the type of worms that you study in your research is relevant to the human brain and the functioning of the nervous system, what exactly is the research that your lab does in terms of specificity?
Yes. So we actually work on two aspects of nervous system function. The first aspect that is something that I've been interested in for many years is looking at how cells surface molecules. So essentially, all of you know that cells are what are required for making up any organism. Right. And you have lots of proteins that are expressed in different parts of the cell. And there are a set of proteins which are called cell surface proteins that are sitting on the surface of the cell, essentially.
Okay.
So these proteins allow the cell to form contacts with another cell, say a neighboring cell, or a neuron to form contacts with another neuron. So what I'm interested in is how these cell surface molecules function in neurons. Mm-hmm. So if you remove this molecule, does it cause changes in the functioning of the neuron? If it does cause changes in the functioning of the neuron, what is it causing? Is it causing more neurotransmitter to get released, less neurotransmitter to get released? Is it affecting the neuron that this one is making connections to? And if so, how is it affecting that neuron? So it's extreme, it's in a very small area, and it's essentially just looking at how these cell surface molecules are actually allowing for these changes to happen. So far, what's known in the field is that these cell surface molecules are required to bring two neurons together and allow them to stay together and make these contacts with each other. And when you remove these cell surface molecules, you disrupt this connection between the two neurons, for instance. But what I'm more interested in understanding is not just how it's brought together and stay together, but what it's actually doing. Is it affecting some sort of signaling process? Mm-hmm. And does that signaling process then cause changes in signaling and hence changes in what happens downstream of it? So does that then cause some sort of change in behavior in the animal? So those are the questions that we ask in the lab. That's one part of the lab. The other part of the lab is interested in looking at essentially how neurons talk to each other without making connections. So neurons, apart from making connections or synapses with other neurons, they also send out some of them send out these small peptides, small protein structures, small proteins, which are called peptides. And these peptides also, form, go and bind to a cell surface molecule on another neuron and cause changes in that neuron. So if this neuron is not making connection with this directly, another neuron directly, it can still send out a peptide that affects this neuron that it's not making a direct connection with. So the questions we are asking are what are the peptides that are being sent out by the neurons? Who do these neurons allow, how do these peptides allow this single neuron to talk to some other neuron or another set of neurons? And if you change these peptides, what happens? Or if you change this, or if you change the receptor, that is the cell surface molecule the peptide binds to, if you change that, what happens? So those, and we are looking at it from, we look at it both from a behavioral aspect, we look at it from a genetic aspect, molecular aspect, and we try to use different ways of actually figuring out what happens. And the bottom line is we want to be, as sure as possible. So you use lots of different experiments to address the same question.
Wow.
So that's essentially what we do a lot.
That's incredible, because now there are a lot of buzzwords, around neurotransmitters, dopamine. People talk about this often. And it seems to me like you're going at even a more micro level to try and understand how these proteins even interact with each other. That is just so incredible and so interesting. First of all, congratulations for winning the Janki Amal National Women Bioscientists Award in 2019. It's an incredible honor for me to be speaking to you about this sort of research. Could you please explain to me and the audience the impact that your research has had in your field?
Yeah. So I was talking about the cell surface molecules. Now, there's a specific class of cell surface molecules which are called claudins. And a lot of work has shown that these claudins sit on epithelial cells. So epithelial cells are the outermost layer of cells. So they have nothing to do with neurons, right? They're our outer layer of cells, and these form connections with other cells. And these proteins called claudins sit on these epithelial cells and allow for connections to other epithelial cells. So I was interested in knowing whether these claudins are actually required for functioning in neurons, and do they allow for crosstalk between neurons, or are they required at the junction where neuron makes a connection with another neuron, or neuron makes a connection with muscle? Just a brief, going backwards, neurons form connections with other neurons, which are called synapses. And neurons also make connections with our body wall muscle. And this is what allows us to walk, move our hands, eat. All of that requires muscle action, and that comes from our neurons, right? So you have a set of neurons that are making connections with muscle, and the same thing happens in C. elegans. You have neurons that make connections with body wall muscle. You have the same set of molecules that are present on the neurons, or similar sets of molecules that are present on the neuron and on the body wall muscles. So what we wanted to see was, are these claudins expressed in neurons or body wall muscle? And if they are expressed, are they actually functional there? So we just started this work, and we found a couple of claudins. Very interestingly, they're present in the neuron. One of them is also present on the body wall muscle. Both of them we found so far are required to maintain the receptors, which are molecules that the neurotransmitters bind to and allow for activation of the muscle. So if you do not have this receptor, then the muscle can no longer see the neurotransmitter. So even if the neuron is sending out the neurotransmitter, it cannot see that neurotransmitter without the receptor to which the neurotransmitter binds. So then it does not, it's useless, right? It does not make this connection at all. So what we've studied is how these claudins are involved in this process. And we're going more into this, just, to further study how claudins might be involved and where they're expressed. Are they expressed in other neurons? Is it just at the body wall muscle? Is it also allowing for making connection for neurons with other neurons? So those are some of the questions we are asking right now.
You said something very interesting, which I think a lot of us, including me, sometimes tend to miss the point. When we talk about the nervous system, we only think about thinking and behavior, but it's actually pretty much everything. If we were to lay out our nervous system and just the neural networks, it would probably map out through our
Yes.
entire body. So studying that at the molecular level is just so incredible. So I'm going to, scope out a little bit and just get your views on, certain aspects of women being a part of science, technology, education, and mathematics. Culturally in India, there may be women, who belong to families or who belong to backgrounds who are discouraged from pursuing a life in STEM. And, it's disheartening, but it's nice to have people like you who would be giving them some advice to navigate that sort of setup. So, what would be your advice to such young women who want to pursue an education and career in a STEM field?
So I think go for it. Obviously, I think
Uh-huh.
it's great. It's there are lots of advantages. Um, so I think one of the things you have to think about is if you enter the STEM field. I'm guessing you would be doing your bachelor's, a master's, a PhD,
Correct.
and you can always think about at the time of a PhD or after your PhD, you can always move. You get there are a lot of options you can think about. There's industry, there's being in academia, there's scientific writing, science communication. So there are lots of options, and what a PhD allows you to do is it allows you to think critically. It gives you a lot more confidence, because usually you after you get that PhD, you do feel your confidence just increases.
Absolutely.
And then,
Absolutely.
so I think that to be honest, in any field, what getting a high degree allows you, gives you a boost in confidence. So I think
Hmm.
it makes a lot of sense to want to do it, and if you want to do it, you should just go ahead and do it. And one of the advantages of being in academic sciences is that there's a lot of flexibility.
Hmm.
So you don't, you can manage your time as long as you're good at managing your time. Usually, you can figure out ways by which you can work when you've got time to work, as opposed to a very rigid 9 to 5 schedule. So you can always plan your experiments so that they happen at 7 o'clock at night versus if you can't do it from 3 to 4, you can always do it a little later. So as long
Right.
as you're fairly organized, you can figure navigate your way through that. And I think that is a huge advantage of
Right.
um, of an academic career. But I think at the end of the day, you have to be very happy with whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
So I think, and at the end of the day, you should be happy with your decisions. So that's important, right? So I think you should decide if this is really what you want to do. You should just go ahead and do it. Really.
Absolutely. I hear you. And it's interesting that you mentioned that there are other avenues as well, because when somebody is not related to a field of science, or do not have parents who are in the field of science and technology, or, maths, they generally think of science as being purely academic. So the fact that you mentioned that there's industry and there is other applied, ways by which you can apply the education that you're, procuring, or the skill set that you're procuring, it's good to have those options, and it's good to have visibility of those options as well.
Yes, absolutely. I think it makes, I think, places should actually talk about this a lot more. It's not done. It's probably not done anywhere in the world, to be honest. You
Mm-hmm.
do not get a lot of input onto what all careers open up for you. But I think if you're interested in other careers, you just have to do it yourself. You just
Yeah,
have to, figure out people who are in careers that you're interested in, figure out what their background is, and talk to them, and see how you can go that in that direction.
absolutely. And another key
Could I
aspect
just
of,
add a small point in this?
please,
So,
please.
so I've had students graduating. Some of them are doing postdocs, but I also have one student who's heading a forensics lab, for instance,
Wow.
after his PhD, because
Mm-hmm.
that's he does a lot of DNA technology, and he's essentially, his PhD has just been looking at worms and looking at molecular biology of worms. So
Wow.
the interview process kind of sailed through it. And so I don't think this was necessarily what he was thinking about, but the it opened up, the avenue opened up, and he decided to see what, if he was a good fit, and he's doing very well. So I don't think you need to go with blinders. There are lots of avenues that one could explore, and you should think about that and talk to people in different fields, and you'll get a better sense of what you might.
So if you have like a broad direction, and if you keep tinkering with your interest, you probably get to your niche and your specialized area of interest. That's interesting. And another aspect of something like you're doing, research is a big part of it. And research in something as hyper technical as your field requires a lot of time. It requires patience, energy, resources, and it also has a significant gestation period. And it may not necessarily have a fixed outcome. So what struggles did you face as a result of choosing a field that has its roots in research, and how did you overcome these struggles?
So this is absolutely true. You do not know what is going to be the outcome. You do not even know whether the outcome is going to be anything of any use.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was a graduate student, one of the things my graduate advisor, and he did this for all his students, he gave us multiple projects to think about. And that really helped, because that, if one project didn't work, and for me, like 3 projects didn't work, so that a lot of things don't work. So then you had something else to fall back on. So that helps. The downside is that there's just too many things. You get overwhelmed. You don't know what's going to work, what's not. So so there are ups and downs to that. That also requires a lot more resources. For my students, I usually, don't have them working on too many things at the same time, because I worry that, then if they just get overwhelmed. And I can see that, you've just come out of undergraduate or master's, and you like 3 projects, you've never worked with any of this before, it becomes a bit overwhelming. The other thing that really helped me was I've always been fairly independent. So I've always been able to kind of navigate my way through things, talk to people. I talk to people a lot about when I get stuck. So that helps. The other, I think also fairly, when you're doing a PhD, you're going to get into problems at some point. I really don't think anybody's just had a completely and absolutely smooth PhD. It's possible, but I have really never met anybody who's had complete smooth sailing. So that really this allows you to actually prepare yourself. It also gives you a good grounding on, can I actually handle this on almost a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
Because now that, I have lots of people, so there are lots of us in the lab, some experiments are going to work, some are not. Yes, it's going to affect the person. It's also going to affect me, right? If experiments aren't. And this is almost, almost every day, or at least every week, you're talking to people and you have negative results. And are you going to be able to deal with that? And, how do you, cross that? How do you not allow that to affect you? And I think some of that just comes with time. You are so used to it. You just get used to it. For instance, I think I apply. So you also need money to do research, and most of us apply for grants. I've been fairly lucky with getting grants here, but as a postdoctoral fellow, I applied for lots of grants, more than 20 odd grants, and I didn't get a single one of them. So you kind of, I think it just becomes part of you. I think you either decide, okay, I can go through this, or you decide maybe this is not what I want to do, and both of which is fine. I think that's so. I think this is also like a little bit of a character building setup for a PhD. It'll give you a good idea as to what you might want to do versus what you might not.
Absolutely. Some key things you mentioned there. You mentioned communication and asking for help when you feel stuck. You mentioned that it's okay to diversify your risk. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Have multiple, interests, and try tinker with different interests and see what works and see what doesn't work. You also mentioned that there is a certain acceptance of failure And there is a certain sense of, yeah, failure may happen, may not happen. In some aspects, it's inevitable. So fail fast and then quickly strategize, re-strategize, regroup, and see what's your next course of action. So all like really, really key life skills, which I think not just in science, we all need to learn in life in general. So those are some really, really good pointers.
Yes, and you've really summarized it really well.
No, it's something that, you know, it gives anyone food for thought when you're in such a specialized field. And I've always wondered that, you know, sometimes it can get frustrating for people doing cubicle lives, but somebody who's in the field of research where you know that you're in for 10 years or more, how do you like keep you know, igniting your interest and passion? And I'd like to ask you that, what do you do to keep your interest and your passion and your motivation alive?
So try and read as much as I can.
Ah,
That really helps, because you read new science, it becomes exciting and it's interesting, and you're like, oh, maybe I could try that, or maybe this would work in this could be an answer to where the place where I'm stuck in. um, I did a lot more when I was a trainee as opposed to right now, because I don't get that much time to just sit and keep reading. But I think that's something that all trainees should learn, that reading, I think, really, really helps you out in many, many ways. You get an idea as to whether somebody's done something similar. You can start thinking about, maybe this would work in the system that I'm looking at. So that really helps. And if you're stuck, usually if you go back, if you look at papers and read through published stuff, you'll get more of an idea as to where you should go. Should you go straight or should you make a turn? So all of that is really helped by reading. So I think that's one of the most important things, just being able to read a lot of literature in your field and around your field. And I think that would really help.
Yeah, it's most certainly a starting point, because I think that's reading will be the first point that gives you food for thought, and then eventually then you can start working on what you want to do. From the conversation, it seems to me like, Kavita, you are very independent thinking, and you have carved your way and you've carved your path in this field. Did besides your inherent factors and your inherent drive, did environment play a role in shaping up who you are and how you think?
Yes, to a huge extent, because I think so my family has always been like, you should do whatever you want. So that has helped to a huge extent. So I think that, really helps, right? So, I haven't been told that you cannot do this or you cannot do that. I think also, I was not very academic, in the sense that as a school student, I wasn't very good at many subjects, including sciences and math. I think it only developed as I, went into like higher 11th and 12th and things like that. But after that, I thought I don't know. I think it just becomes really interesting. And then, I used to do summers in different labs, and there's certain things when you see DNA in a tube, you actually see DNA. You're like, oh, this is really very cool. And then, you do more reading on it, or you do genetic crosses, and you cross, the simplest is Drosophila, and you actually look you cross a red-eye fly with a white-eyed fly, and you just look at in the next generation, and you actually see, Mendelian genetics being completely there in front of you. And I don't know, it's almost like magic, but it's not magic. So, so it just feeds in, and you think that, oh, maybe I could do this. It's not too bad. I think environment does play a role.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's good to know that you didn't face, that resistance in your immediate environment. But in terms of, if you would have to give some sort of, context to women who want to pursue a career in STEM, and what are the challenges that they should anticipate, and what suggestion do you have for, such women to tackle these challenges?
Yeah. So I think you're going to, you have to be fairly thick-skinned. You're going to face people are just going to think that maybe you can't do it. And that, I'm not saying it necessarily is going to happen. I have not faced it a lot. I faced it to some extent.
I see.
More, I think one faces being talked over, that happens probably fairly frequently, especially if there are just very few women, more men. There are chances that being talked over. Again, I've actually in India, I've almost never faced something like that. So
Interesting.
I faced it in other countries. So
Okay.
I think to some extent you just, if you decide this is what you want to do, I think you will also develop a little bit of a thick skin. I mean, you're going to go through a huge grind. You're going to have a lot of failures, and you find that it's not such a big deal at the end of the day to some extent. Again, I'm saying this from my perspective, and I think for other people it could be far worse, and it could be a big deal, and they should definitely take action in that case.
Right.
I think you'll have to convince yourself before being able to convince other people that you want to do this. I think that's something that everybody, it's everybody's own kind of battle, or kind of, I don't know.
Absolutely.
To face that, I think first you should convince yourself that this is really what you want to do. And then I think it becomes, you're in a better position to convince other people that maybe this is a good option. And you can bring out the pros and cons of this versus something else and talk about why you'd be interested. And I think if people see that you're really interested and really passionate about something, it becomes harder for them to say, no, you absolutely cannot do this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think you should just if you're going to convince other people about this, I think you should just do your homework really well. Just really, figure out what are the advantages, disadvantages and lay it out. And I think if you really want to do it, you probably do a very good job of figuring out why you want to do it as well.
From my personal experience, I feel like this is a learned skill, particularly for women, to be self-assured, to have that self-belief and conviction that they know what they're talking about, and to be outspoken. I think it's one of those skills that you learn along the way. You have trials and errors. You may have a very good environment, but sometimes you might find resistance. And the more competence you develop, I think the more confident you eventually get. And the more confident you get, then the more self-assured you are. And the more self-assured you are, it probably gives you more confidence.
I think you're absolutely right. Yes, I think you're absolutely right.
It's I think it's across every industry, in science, in almost every field. Well, from the time that we're children, we're probably told to be diminutive, to be quiet, to be shy. And then that dynamic sort of changes when you're in the real world, and you have to be more outspoken, you have to be more assertive. And that's a learned skill, which I think through some time one begins to realize that, okay, I need to learn this if I have to have my word out.
Yes, absolutely. I think everything comes with learning, practicing, and some sort of belief in yourself. So the only thing I would definitely tell people who are in the field, who are starting off, is to be adventurous and to try new techniques. This is something that I have always been very much more hesitant than I probably should have been. Trying new techniques, especially techniques which are challenging. It always used to take me time to I'd have to really, really think about it, read up about it. I wouldn't just plunge in and say, okay, let's do this experiment, although it's going to be difficult. But I think that's something that I would really, young people getting into the field, I think you should just go right in. If you think that this technique will help you answer a question, you should just go in and do it. And I'll say this from experience of really just sitting and worrying about it and thinking 100 times. I still do it, but I keep telling everybody around me that this is great. You should just do this experiment.
And this is really good advice for people who are starting out, that just jump right in. But if there's some sort of vision that you have for yourself, say 10 years from now, what would that be?
I have for myself what I want to do 10 years. Okay. So I think I would like to continue in what I'm doing and find more answers. Hopefully, I would also like to go a little bit into the vertebrate system to see if some of what our findings are translatable with in the rodent system and things like that. That's about it, I think.
So growth in your passion, effectively.
Yes.
Growth in your passion and growth in what is your life's purpose.
Yeah,
so
and hopefully do interesting and solid science. Continue to do.
Wow. I look forward to, understanding more of your work. It'll take me some time to understand the work, but the little gist that I have, it seems like it's very groundbreaking. And this is a question that I intend on asking all of my guests. What, according to you, does it take to be a resolute woman?
I think independence, of independence in everything. You should, thought, action. I think it really helps being independent. Being passionate about something and working towards that. But that would help. But all of that comes with you deciding, I'm going to do this, irrespective of a lot of obstacles. And I think that's where kind of independence comes out. That, I will do this irrespective of lots of other things around me.
Wow. Independence also gives you ownership, right?
Yes.
That is wonderful, wonderful advice. And if somebody wants to find you, Kavita, where can people find you? Should they write you an email? Or
yes, email is the best way of getting in touch with me. Yes, absolutely.
Super. And is there any parting message that you would like to give to our audience?
Wear a mask. When you go out, just that.
For people who'll be listening to this and watching this later, we're in the middle of the lockdown. We're in the middle of a once-in-a-century pandemic. So please wear a mask. I hear you. Thank you so much for coming onto the show, Kavita. I appreciate the work that you do so much. And we wish you massive success in your research.
Thank you so much, Suvarna. I really enjoyed this.
Excellent. Keep inspiring and stay resolute.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you liked this episode. For more content to empower your mindset, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And do share this with resolute women in your life. Take care and bye-bye.